I said I was going to do some more reviews this year, and I can't think of a better way to kick off this Gen X perspective on books than to talk about our gal Liz Gilbert. I say our gal because she was born in 1969. She is Gen X. She is one of us. And if you recall, she wrote the very, very, very famous Eat, Pray, Love that descended upon all of us in 2006 and just blew up everybody's life. Okay, not everybody, but you tell me if you didn't read that book or see that movie and then really start to reevaluate your regular 9-to-5 life. I literally remember seeing that trailer and those first few notes of Florence and the Machine's Dog Days of Summer. I think I quit my job. But anyway, Liz's memoir Writing Ways was back last year with All the Way to the River, in which you remember all the lessons that she was teaching us in Eat, Pray, Love, and then again in her other memoir, Committed. Scratch all of that. None of that mattered. I'm sorry, that's not what she says in this memoir, but that was the feeling I walked away with. Because she admits that in this one, she is not only confronting the addiction of her lover, who is addicted to drugs, Liz has to confront her own addiction to people and relationships. She said she used them like uppers and downers, people who she needed to get a high from and people who she needed to self-regulate with, because she couldn't do any of that but on her own. And she even admits in this book that, yes, there were all these powerful lessons that came from her travels in Eat, Pray, Love, but she said none of that stuck when she got back to the US, which was one of the main arguments that people had about that book. They said, yeah, of course, you're having this life-altering experience. You, A, have the money and privilege to do it. And she takes all of that and marries the guy that she met during the love part. And after what we were all thinking was this big fairy tale ending, she actually leaves this man and then ends up with her best friend once her best friend says, oh my gosh, I am dying of cancer. Liz very respectfully does not go into the details of how necessarily she left her husband for her friend. But there was certainly a part of me, I think, who had followed along in this journey that was just kind of like, oh, man. It just felt like, again, the throwing away of all of the lessons and all of the insights from all of the other books. Which, by the way, this is one of the reasons I have a hard time reviewing memoirs, because I don't feel like I have any moral standing to be talking about how someone lived their life. But it's hard to not talk about that because that's essentially what the memoirs are. That said, Liz is still, as far as being a writer goes, is still, at her peak storytelling. This book is spliced up also with her drawings and different poems, and you're getting to see a lot of different shades of her that perhaps we haven't seen in other books, and I did like that. She is brutally honest. I think if you've been following any of the traction on this book, you know that the biggest confession in this book is that during the absolute throes of the addiction, and she, by the way, the drugs are all in her house and everything too, she plots to, how do we say this? Relieve her lover of her existence. That's not saying it right either. She tries to end Rhea's suffering forcefully. She doesn't do it, but she plots it, and she tells you how she plots it in detail. And the only thing that stops her is Rhea's suspicion, which actually that's another scene that's written so beautifully. And again, to me, this continues to go back to the privilege, because I'm like, you've had the unicorn experience of authors being able to go from relative obscurity to having a memoir that blows up, and you are the writer of that entire decade. But that does not remove you from at one point in your life having your house full of drugs and alcohol, and everyone is it's just a bender for months. I say all that to say, if you love Liz Gilbert's work, there's no reason why you shouldn't have already read this. Do not pick this up if you haven't experienced any of her work, because I think the impact of it'll just be different. There's something about going on the journey with Liz that makes this book kind of what it is. That said, if addiction is part of your life, it's part of the life of someone that you know, and you want a perspective on what that looks like, this isn't a bad book to read, because you will be able to divorce yourself from Liz Gilbert as the author and just see her as a completely messed up individual, as people are, because we're human. Anyway, that's my first review of the year. Did you read it? Please tell me your thoughts. Yeah, because this was a ride.